I guess I'm getting a first-hand lesson on why great podcasts or radio shows have producers. Why I don't have enough hands to do all the things that need to be done. To do intro music that gets looped into a video as well as the audio when you're recording it, much less do the video and audio at the same time. This is a interesting thing, but I thought, hey, it's a Saturday. I got all my shows done. I was able to make promo videos for most of them this week. I mean, gotta enjoy your ice days when you get them. And, you know, next week we'll maybe knock out an episode early tomorrow so that we can have it up for Monday without having to squeeze it in somewhere else. It's just, you gotta try new things. You gotta have a little fun with the situation. So today's episode, there's a link up above, but the audio, I'm going to be recording both video and audio at the same time and see how this works out today. We're going to have a little separate bonus episode, if you will, of According to Callus this week. Why? Because I can. But really, if you've been paying attention at all, the whole world, not the whole world, the entire United States is freaking out about a single balloon that allegedly came from China that's here to spy on us. Now, I don't think I'm entirely excited about having a foreign country put a spy satellite or balloon over the United States, but to act like this is the end of the world, to act like this is a shocking development, is humorous at best. I mean, the Chinese have been putting satellites up for years. The Russians did it for decades before, and nobody lost any sleep over this. I mean, how many satellites do we have revolving around the world, or actually stationary satellites even, that are doing the same exact thing? I know it's us, so it's different rules, right? Okay, so let's just back it up just a second here. Let's consider what we're dealing with. We're talking about a weather balloon that apparently has some kind of communications equipment on it that allows them to record and or spy on what we, the people, are doing in these United States. Okay, I'm lost as to why that's really a concern. I'm no big fan of China. I think that it's safe to say the least communist person in the room, which I'm the only one, is me. But even if I'm in a giant room with hundreds of people, I'd be willing to bet I'm the least communist-oriented person there. So I'm not enthusiastic nor excited about the fact that the Chicoms are putting spy satellites or spy balloons in the air, period, end of story. But to act like this is something new, or this is a challenge, or this is something uber concerning, just shocks me. I mean, don't we have enough troubles in the world? Don't we have to go out and find something new to stir up? I mean, do the neocons not have enough on their plate with the problems in Ukraine that they caused? Now, you don't have to like Putin. You don't have to think the Russians are innocent to realize the neocons got exactly what they wanted. They wanted a war that they could fight without, quote, having to put Americans at risk. Well, I'm here to tell you, I don't think they're going to be successful in keeping Americans out of harm's way for very much longer. So, let me ask you, why the big hubbub about a Chinese weather balloon spy feature? Again, it's not quite who cares, but why the giant concern? I'm fairly certain they have a dozen spy satellites up doing the exact kind of thing right now that we've been doing for decades, the Russians have been doing for decades. Why the concern? Why the special note? If you really want to get my 2 cents on this, if you'll allow me to deviate from the cause at large here, that is the Chinese spying on us, let us consider that our very own government has probably hundreds of spy satellites of one shape or form circling the globe right now, either stationary or rotating around, doesn't matter, but they are taking far more information from us on a daily basis, whether it's the NSA, the CIA, the FBI, the DIA, or whatever other intelligence organization that's out there. To me, that's far more concerning that our own government feels the need to spy on their own people to control us, to make sure that nothing bad happens. But the reality is, they're the biggest spy in the entire world. And for them to be pointing fingers at the Chinese, come on, man. Now, don't get me wrong, it's humorous. There's lots of good memes out on this right now. And I guess I don't have to like it, but I have to also admit that the Americans are far... I can't even think of the word I want to use here. We're asleep at the switch. We're concerned about the Chinese doing this while the American government does it far better, far worse, and more aggressively, but nobody thinks anything of this. Nobody loses sleep over it. No, I take that back. There are some civil libertarians out there that have a R after their name, and there's a whole lot of civil libertarians with L's after their name, and there might even be a few civil libertarians that have D's after their name, and then there's a whole lot of people that are not affiliated in politics whatsoever that are rightly disturbed that our own government spends so much time spying on its own people. But I gotta figure this is a little projection, a little distraction, a sleight of hand going on here. That, oh, we're gonna point at the Chinese for doing something that we've been doing to a much larger extent, much more invasively for decades. You gotta ask yourself, why might that be? Or, better yet, let's just acknowledge there's tons of spy satellites from multiple actors floating around the Earth, or orbiting around the Earth, to use a more appropriate term, whether it's geosynchronous or not. But how many of you have one of these? And it doesn't matter what the brand is. HTC, Google, Samsung, Apple. I think Microsoft still makes one. Who knows? Ericsson, Sony. It doesn't matter. But every smartphone that you have tracks where you're going, where you've been, probably listens into everything you say, keeps track of everything you look at and you read, and oh, by the way, logs every phone call. And it would not surprise me if every phone call is also recorded. But we all do this willingly, all day, every day. And quite frankly, it's kind of hard to lose sleep over it, because if they want to know what you're doing, they'll go find a FISA court, which is basically meaningless. It's a rubber stamp, and they'll get it anyways. So the old conservative tripe was, well, if you have nothing to hide, you shouldn't fear that. Well, okay, fine, Mr. and Mrs. Conservative. But even if I have nothing to hide, I still have a right to privacy. I still have an expectation that in my own house, doing my own things, it's in private. At least until everybody started carrying one of these. And while you're at it, every Amazon or Google smart product that you have does the same thing or has the same capability. And when you bring it in your house, you're giving them permission. So I just choose not to be upset that the Chinese government has got a weather balloon with spy capabilities when my own government already spies much better and for much longer than the Chinese would and can. Now, what are you going to do about it? Well, let me tell you. Unless you're going to go live like the Amish in the sticks, completely separated from all electrical anything, right? You can't have any electrical appliances because they'll track you. Can't have natural gas because they'll track you. So you want to live that primitive lifestyle out in the sticks as an Amish. And I'm not banging on the Amish. Anybody that wants to live like that, got uber respect for. I couldn't do it. But even if that's the lifestyle you choose, those satellites are certain to see you, right? It's certainly you're not hiding anything if they really want to find you. But at least you're not making it easy. At least you're avoiding unnecessary free data transfer. So the really pressing question I have is, why the sudden concern? What is it that this is all about, really? So I'm just off the top of my head, I can think of a couple of reasons. One is it's a distraction. What are they distracting us from? Not really sure. I'm certain that there's something else going on that they don't want us to see or pay attention to. And when I say they, I mean our government, right? I mean, Whether it's our government or some other entity that controls our government, who knows, who cares? You'll notice I'm not wearing tinfoil hat here. It's obvious that somebody doesn't want us to see something by making light of this, by pushing it out on the agenda. Okay, that's one option. Option number two, it's a pretext. A pretext for what? Well, I'm glad you asked. It could be a pretext for some kind of military interaction. It could be a pretext for some kind of confrontation that gets stepped up. I mean, we've been at a low intensity war footing for so long with the Chicoms and the Russians. I mean, it's not going to take much to push us over the edge. And again, not excited, don't support, think it's a bad idea, but it's there. You ought to be concerned about it. You ought to be paying attention to it. But what are we going to do? Or what can we do, right? I guess the third option is they really are scared. They're surprised. They didn't figure, for whatever reason, that the entity that put this up, and it may not be the Chinese, mind you, it could be a private actor or an individual group doing this work. And that's what's got them spooked. And it's much easier to blame it on the Chinese while you investigate to find out who did it. I hesitate to go down any of these paths directly because there's just not enough evidence, one way or the other. And one thing I always like to pride myself on is I'm free and happy to talk about all these different options and everything else that it could be. But I'm not going to risk my credibility. I'm not going to risk my own well-being, if you will, to make a bunch of accusations that I can't back up. I think it's fair to ask the question. I think it's almost at the point in our lives where we should just assume that it's our own government up to no good. And it saddens me to think that way. It's disappointing that this is what we've come to in these United States, that our own worst enemy might be our own government. I'm not happy about that. I took an oath. I take that oath seriously. I'm north of 50 now, and I'm a little bit bigger than I was back in the day, but I'd like to think that, there's something that I could still do to prevent a total tyrannical dictatorship. But we're not there yet. But how many more steps do we have to take? How much more do we need to tolerate? The colonists went their own way for far less than this. The Texians and the Tejanos went their own way for far less than this. So, I gotta admit, I'm comfortable. I enjoy my life. I enjoy my family. I enjoy my community. And as challenging as things may be in local politics, they're not that bad. Not in the grand scheme of things. There's some wackadoo stuff that goes on. There's some, crazies that have way too much power and influence. Most of them are not on my team, mind you. But it's not the end of the world. I'm not ready to throw in the towel. I'm not going to give up. So likewise, I'm not going to lose sleep, and I'm not going to go crazy over a weather balloon with some spy stuff on it, knowing that there's far worse already happening. So I'm putting this out as an extra bonus here, right? We're going to call this episode, let me check my notes here, episode 348, the Saturday special. We're talking about spy satellites, or in this case, balloons. And I'm just going to tell you, I really think we need to just encapsulate this in a, that's interesting, category and move on with life. The fact that anybody would feel super threatened about this, sorry, I'm just not there with you. And with that, this is According to Callus. We're going to wrap it up quickly. This is about half the time frame I would put into a regular episode. It is a bonus, right? And you're getting a video too. I hope this turns out okay. I'll be popping it up on YouTube and probably on Facebook just for fun, because we can. And I'll look forward to seeing you next week, aka the other side. Thank you, and good night.